Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, I have one of my sons with me, Mr. VPK6 from his YouTube channel. His name is Victor when he is not on his YouTube channel. Hello, Victor.
Hey, how are you guys?
All right, everybody is doing quite well, and we are talking about when teenagers rebel today, okay? Because we got some people who are raising teenagers. We got some folks who are also ushering young adults out the door. We have some grandparents of teenagers, and we know from past experiences and so forth that we all have been guilty of rebelling. So I thought, what better way than to get to the root of this issue is to talk to a teenager who was once rebellious, but then God got into your life. There were some people who were once very critical of you, said what you wasn't going to be, what you wasn't going to do. Some folks that were hating on you because you started getting blessed and highly favored of the Lord. Okay. Jealousy rose up. So Victor's going to speak to some things when it comes to rebellion. What made you at some point say, I'm not going to listen to parents. I'm not going to do, what teachers tell me to do. I'm just going to have some fun. What was it on the inside of you that was making you feel that way? Because we're talking about you were very young, talking crazy, running around, acting up. We're talking about, I remember he started some silly stuff back when he was 4 and then 5 and then 9. And it seemed like you were starting to get worse instead of better. And then I was even walking down the street and some folks was talking to me saying some things like, oh, out of all the boys, that one right there is going to be your problem. So, there was some negativity being spoken out into the atmosphere before you was even old enough to defend yourself. So can you share with me what made you on the inside sometimes just want to just go all out and be wild and just say stuff and do things that were totally inappropriate?
I think it was the entertainment industry, because a lot of those rappers and stuff, I was always imitating them and trying to act all thuggish. Then there would be a day where I have a different personality where I was just messing around, being like a comedian. So I think it was just the stuff that I was listening to maybe, or the people I was around, they were just goofy. In elementary, I thought it was a free for all because I was always acting like that because I wanted to stand out from the rest. I felt like probably I just never thought of it until now, but I think it was because I wanted to stand out. And, obviously I was a little kid, I was immature, so that's part of why too. But I think it's because, and what was weird that I never went to church one time in my youth like that, unless I was visiting my mom. So it was kind of weird how we never got to church at all, so that I could see why I was acting the way I was. I didn't get anybody to pray on, no one was praying on me or anything, and I never got to experience anything dealing with God. So when I visited my mom, I felt different. But then I was the same way when I got back, because we weren't going to church at all in California, so that was tough.
All right. So you do believe that spirituality has something to do with why you went from being so immature, rebellious, to being mature and a disciplined individual.
Right. Because I feel like if I wasn't close with God, I felt like I was going to do so many stupid stuff, and I did, because I got in trouble for different things. Like this one thing, I was singing this one song by Mariah Carey, and I remember I got in trouble for this. They said it was sexual harassment or whatever, but
how old?
I was 9 or 10 or something. I was 9. No, I was 9, or it might have been 7 or 6. Yeah, because I was in an after school program, and I remember she was in there, and then that's when I was kind of acting weird and singing songs that was on the radio and stuff, and it was just too much. It was more of the world. I was basically being like the world compared to how little kids are. So.
And just for some of you all, I just wanted to let you know that a lot of these schools, they're cracking down on sexual harassment early. Exactly. So some of us who were born back in the 70s, 80s, and, where you could pretty much get away with smacking a boy's butt, or a boy smacking your butt, or, just running around making nasty little comments about the anatomy, or teasing somebody with little sexual phrases from movies or whatever. By the time Victor showed up, he was telling me, he said that, oh no, he said that we get disciplined for that. I mean, we're talking about not being able to go to class for a period of time. You get that on your record they will state in the record that the child was sexually harassing another one. And I know those words are pretty strong to use on, a 6 or 7-year-old at the time. Yeah. And it shocked me, but this is how serious they were taking this as Victor was growing up.
Right. And what was weird, after all this happened, I noticed last year in high school, my 10th grade year, I went to a different high school, and next thing you know, this kid, the devil was messing with people around me, so basically this kid thought it was cool to smack my butt, and I was like, no, dude, that's not right, so every time he would do it, I would, hit him or something, but the thing about me, I didn't let him know right away, so I kind of let him know at the, third hit, after the third time, weeks later, he did it again out of nowhere, and that's when I finally told the teacher, because I'm like, I don't play that stuff, I'm not a guy that's gonna let someone just hit me like that. That's not fair. So I told the teacher and stuff, and they were the people in the office were acting like it wasn't a big deal, and I was kind of thinking and then what's going on, and how come you guys are just letting that slide like that? He's all is it because you play football or something? But no, it's not that. It's just you don't be smacking kids' butt. You know that. The teachers were acting like it wasn't a big deal, and they said, oh, we're just gonna take his football thing away. That's all they did. I'm like, dude, at least give him an in-school suspension, because I told him they kept doing it and stuff, but I didn't let him know right away and stuff like that. But still, they should have took that a lot more serious, because at elementary they would have just sat him out and stuff like that.
I think that some of these schools it's on a case-by-case basis too, because some schools you got to do something really bad for them to actually do things, and then other schools they nip it in the bud right away. So we got a lot of that foolishness that goes on in society in general, and as we can clearly see at the time of this recording, there are men who have been groping women, have been using all sorts of opportunities as carrots to try to get to try to get power and control over them, and successfully too. And then the next thing you know, these women, they're going on and doing some inappropriate things just to get opportunities because of the sexual harassment and so forth, and the backlash that might come if the stories come out. So, I mean, this is unfortunate. We're seeing this happening with the adults, and then, of course, with Victor enlightening us to some things even on the elementary as well as on the high school level. And sometimes people are on top of things and making sure that people are punished accordingly. And then other times they're not. And a lot of this foolishness comes out of rebellion because there is this fight against doing what is right. Wrong is esteemed in media. Sinful activities are esteemed, but righteous behavior, oh, that's boring. That's not cool. Why do you want to do this when it's so much fun doing that? You see, the scriptures say Hebrews 13:17 says, obey them that have the rule over you. Okay. Now, some people will take that out of context in the sense that they'll say, well, that means even sinful activity then, because it says obey them that have the rule over you. But we're not talking about people, that are sinful and following after them. We know that Jesus, he wasn't going to go out there and do all sorts of things in the New Testament, just because there's authority over him. You see, obey them that have the rule over you and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. The next is Proverbs 14:16-17. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil. So you got to a place where you had so much consequence for the things that you were doing that enough was enough, right? Can you share a little bit about how you got to that place where you said, okay, all this immature behavior and so forth is just bringing nothing more than problems. So now it's time to be mature. Tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, like 5th grade, I started, that was my last biggest issue because I went to a Mexican school in California. It was more like a Mexican elementary school. So basically, I called it a Spanish school. But basically, like, I went there and I had issues with some kids. and stuff like that. They were like messing with me with the basketball, and that was when it was winding down. I noticed like after that we moved to Pennsylvania. So we moved from California to Pennsylvania, and next thing you know, when I went to Pennsylvania living with my grandma for a while, it started changing, like I started feeling like, okay, I should do right now. I'm living with different people, I'm living in a new atmosphere, I want to do what's right. So 6th grade, that was it. I didn't have any issues, no fights. But later on, like after we moved again, like to middle school, like a different middle school, because I was in 6th grade, and Pennsylvania does 6th through 8th grade. So after 6th grade, 7th grade came, I dealt with some issues. Kids were messing with me and stuff, but it wasn't anything bizarre to the point I beat them up. I just said, stop doing that, bro, because like they thought it was cool because I met new people. Every time I meet someone, you want to see how they are, and then there's issues. So when I met the kid, he was just like chill. A few days later, boom, he started messing with me. I was like, dude, don't do that. Like, stop, And I think I didn't tell a teacher around that time. I did something, but after that, he didn't mess with me. After 7th grade, 8th grade came in Pennsylvania when I was in middle school. And then next, I dealt with a big fight, and with this big muscular kid, and I showed my mom and stuff.
Okay, now stop right there. Yeah. You said that you got into a fight, so you did notice that there were some changes, but here's what the audience needs to know. What the audience needs to know is, number one, when you're moving around a bit, children are going to receive the change in so many different ways. Some children are going to be okay with the change and they adjust well. Others, they don't. So there's a rebellion against change. I don't want to live in this community. I don't want to move in this new area. Okay. So what Victor did mention was that some of what he was going through was the new location and not wanting to be in the new location.
I said that before the drama even started. I remember I was saying to my dad, I want to move and stuff like that. And, moving just changed everything and kind of upsetted me a little bit. And I was like, okay, whatever. But once I started going to my middle school, I started like definitely seeing a lot of different things and stuff like that. I started seeing different people, because I went to a different school that wasn't even like that. So we were like not far from the city of the town that we lived in. And next thing you know, I started seeing a difference. So then next thing you know, I noticed the time was changing. I was starting to get older. And every time I started to get older, I started seeing new things. Like 8th grade was like the biggest fight of my life. I was a muscular kid and he was bigger than me. But I noticed since then, like it just was a change. So after 8th grade, high school, I was planning on having my own little resolution and saying like, I'm not going to get in no fight, and anything. And nothing happened. So I was like, thank God, seriously, because I've been dealing with fights since elementary.
And you were starting to go to church around that time too. We don't want to lose sight of that, because in Victor's situation, he did bring spirituality into it. So many children don't. And the encouragement of those who were believers around him helped out. Okay, because from a distance, I was talking to Victor about God. His grandmother was talking to him about God. Then he also had his dad had ended up remarrying, so there was the wife who was taking the children to church. So there was the influences of God around him, you see. So we can't say that, oh no, Victor just did all of this on his own. He didn't. No. And that is the great deception of the enemy. The enemy wants people to believe that, okay, you can do all this in your own strength. No, you can't. Victor, when he told you earlier, he said that when I was in California and I was living with my dad, we didn't go to church. We weren't into church, okay? They weren't praying about the things that were going on. Matter of fact, he said they weren't praying at all. He had shared with me.
Every once in a blue moon, I remember. I was telling my dad, would you mind praying? And he did a little bit, and that was it. It wasn't anything where we were all praying though.
Right.
So. Yeah.
Right. So there's no deliverance that's going on at that particular time. It's just thank you for the food, or thank you for my clothes, or please, please heal me from this, that, and the other. Those are the simple prayers. Yeah. And those are great. But then if you don't have a belief behind the prayers, and you're not going where you need to go, in order to get deliverance from what is plaguing you, then yes, it's going to show up in fights. Yep. Okay. With adults, we don't typically physically fight, but when we are out of fellowship with the Lord, we argue, okay? And we argue like young folks, okay? Or we have our share of issues where we may not argue with our voice, but there's the silent treatment. There's a coldness in the atmosphere. So when we talked about the wise man feareth and departed from evil, but here's what Proverbs says, but the fool rageth and is confident. So when you're confident that you're right, when you're confident that you want to beat somebody up, you're going to rage. And if I'm not wanting to bring God into my life, and I'm thinking that, oh, that's all a bunch of fairy tales, that Bible and those people are just so self-righteous, hypocritical, whatever. And I got this negative countenance. I'm going to push all things spiritual out of my life, and I'm going to embrace all things worldly. But then what happens to the rage? What happens to the anger that's on the inside? What happens to those times where I'm going through so much? You see? I'm dealing with them in my own strength. I mean, the devil can't cast out the devil, right? So when you reach that point where you say, okay, I'm done with the fights. I'm done with pushing God out of my life or not even acknowledging him. What's happening to you?
When I say that, I just feel like a change inside me, and I feel like I just need to do what's right, and that's motivation for me, because like if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't even be here. So like all those times when I was telling you when I was young, getting in trouble is more like a thing to let everyone know that, you know, if you have God on the case, you don't have to deal with this, you know. And I felt like in the background, if I was back, like if I was gonna bring back, you know, my old childhood, I would definitely get right with the God right on the spot. Because I did know about God when I saw my mom and stuff, but when we were by ourselves, we didn't even know about God that much because we were like in the world too much. Mm-hmm. So I think in the world it does mess you up, because then you regret it and you're like, man, I wish I was there. I wish I did this, and you have all these regrets. So I feel like when we start like growing and maturing with God, I feel like we should start on the spot, not wait until like we're like 30 or 40. Like I started at 15 last year, so that's pretty a good age to start. And I just want to keep going, because if I left God, and it wouldn't be the same. Too much world.
Well, I'll tell you that my parents, they started me earlier, but it wasn't, I shouldn't even say it was my parents, because I had an aunt and I had a grandmother. Yeah. And my aunt, she encouraged private school, and then my parents followed suit with that. But we weren't going to church on Sundays, and we weren't praying as a family either. So there were our issues that we dealt with, but we dealt with them internally. Okay. But when it came to educational issues, which you had that opportunity as well as me, in terms of having counselors around. So it wasn't just about church and reading the Bible and praying as the maturity was taking place. But I know from my own personal experience, there were also people around me who were supportive of my education. With you had counselors that you were seeing, that you were talking to, when it came to building you up with your intellect and so forth. So there's those other things that are helpful as well, that are not spiritual, but do bring some light to your maturity. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the types of things that you read and you watch and all of that. What sorts of things would you suggest teenagers do when it comes to just staying right with the Lord and doing mature things and being productive in society?
I think for teens, stuff that I would like suggest is basically to let everyone know, like they have a Bible. You know, I know people say it sucks and stuff, but it's not like boring once you start spending time with God. And that's the thing I want to say is spend time with God, read the Bible. Watch some videos that will inspire you. Like I was watching this pastor's video one time. This wasn't even long ago. It was like 2 weeks ago, I think. So basically I was watching like how this one pastor was just talking about different things, dealing with like, I think it was like Proverbs or something. And he was letting everyone know like, this is a good way to do it. it. And at church, you know, like they have this thing called connection points. So basically it helps you read certain scriptures. Like I want to check out the David thing. There's this David movie, then there's a David book. So I guess that's one of my favorite characters in the Bible. So basically, like I would say, like spending time with God, reading the Bible, watching videos, and if you're stressed out, I like gamma waves and classical music. So I think that helps me a lot and stuff like that. Basically, like just spending time with God. That's the number one.
You changed your diet too.
Yeah.
There were things that teenagers tend to eat.
Yeah.
And those types of things were no, I'm not talking about peanut butter, but I'm talking about just in general, like you're not the type of person who's sitting up there and you're binging on food.
Yeah.
And that helps too in terms of your mind, your body, and spirit. And on top of that, you were exercising and you continue to exercise using your bike and you were going to the weight room and everything last year. You were a part of a sport.
Summer, yeah.
You were also a part of a sport too. So.
Yeah. What do you want me to say? Like.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm just giving you an opportunity to share some of the things you did.
Oh.
To stay healthy.
Oh, okay, yeah. Basically, I was just like staying active. Even if I'm not doing track, I was actually still running over the summer and just like lifting weights. I did like, you know, different shoulder presses, and I have a workout video on my channel. And what else did I do? I was doing a lot of stuff dealing with like watching like certain foods. Like I wasn't trying to eat too many greasy foods, and watching like eating light before I worked out. I wasn't
drink soda either.
Yeah, I don't drink soda either. So basically, like when I used to drink soda, it would break me out. And most teens, to be honest, they told me, they said it breaks my face out, and I was like, wow. So, you know, like I think stuff like that, sodas, anything carbonated that, you know, like sparkling water and stuff like that, that stuff's really not good for you. Certain Gatorades, I noticed, that has too much sugar. You don't want to drink all of that. So I suggest, like, you know, maybe Powerade would be good or something like that. Mm-hmm. And just eating more healthy fruits. Say if you don't like certain fruits, there's always something out there that you could eat healthy. I mean, taking vitamins, you know, like not overdose or anything, but like taking vitamins, right. You know, like multivitamins works. Acne products, you know, that you guys use out there that could help your face. Then I wash my face 3 times a day. That's another thing. And just like sometimes it's just good to just eat light. You know, my mom was telling me was that you just want to eat simple meals, not like big gulps of like rice and spaghettis and stuff like that. And I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better with myself by not eating too much because I don't want that being a habit when I get to my 30s and stuff. So
right,
that's the thing.
And the last point is that he watches the company that he keeps.
Yeah.
Because if you're rolling with a bunch of guys that's up to no good, then of course you're going to find yourself in that unrighteous living. But I noticed that with Victor, he's very careful about who he's talking to, who he's connecting with, whether on the phone, off the phone, via the internet. You want to share a little bit about that, and then we'll close the message.
Basically, like, I see a lot of people that are not really right with God, and they cuss all the time and stuff. It's hard to find anyone that doesn't cuss. There's some people I hang out with that don't cuss, but to be honest with you, if it's a song, if there's someone's playing a rap song at lunchtime, it's going to have cuss words, and sometimes they lip sing it or whatever, but I'm just looking like, okay, whatever. But I guess I have a small circle at lunchtime. Sometimes I guess spend time with myself. Recently I haven't, but a few weeks ago I did because I just wasn't feeling people. I wasn't trying to deal with the drama and deal with, who fought who and gossip, because there is a lot of gossip in high school, and I'm sure you guys knew because you guys were probably at that time where you guys were like, what the heck is going on? And so basically I just keep my circle like tight, and I don't try to like hang out with everybody because I see it in school, you know, there's always that one guy that's always messing around calling girls names, calling this, that, and the other, you know, like it's just too much drama. So right. I just keep my circle tight. And one time I was actually like behind the school of my high school, and I was spending time with God. I just closed my eyes for a few minutes and started just listening to his music. And I was playing worship music at lunch one time because I brought my speaker and I was playing Christian rap. And I suggested to people I hang out with about Christian rap. I was like, you know, the worldly, all they talk about is sex, drugs, and money. I said that you guys should like listen to Christian rap, even if they're not all the way, if they're playing both sides of the fence. At least their music's positive. I mean, they're not talking about killing people and stuff. They're actually talking about working for Christ, grinding for Christ, you know, stuff that motivates me. And I really like this one song by Canton Jones called what is it called? Kingdom Business. Yeah, and I comment on that song, and I said this song's like a motivational song for Christ. I mean, this song's really good. So, you know, just stuff like that encourages you and inspires you. Mm-hmm. Actually, before my track meets, I was actually listening to stuff like that, and it inspired me to do better. So it's cool. Put God on the case.
There it is.
Stuff like that.
the other thing I wanted to mention is that Victor, he doesn't do the parties because he knows what happens at the parties. Okay. As much as people love hanging out, you got to be selective, right? As adults, we figured it out later in life after we went to our share of parties and people were drunk and people were using drugs and people were being sexually immoral and all of that. Why learn the hard way? So the thing that I like about Victor, as well as some of the other young people I've come across, is that they're not trying to learn the hard way. They're nipping some things in the bud early on. They're telling themselves as well as others, I am not going to be in atmospheres that's going to lead to all sorts of problems. I don't want to end up in jail. I don't want to end up on a hustle that's going to put me 6 feet deep. You know, they see enough examples before them and they choose to make a difference. Now, the great sin is when adults encourage them to do things that they did back in the day and then try to put a little fancy ribbon on it with their little conversation. Well, kids gonna be kids. No, they don't have to be in the way that we once were or in the way that we see in media. Kids can do some things differently, and they're not robbing themselves of a childhood by standing up to the bully. They're not robbing themselves of a childhood by avoiding going to various events that they know is going to be problems on top of problems. So if a child is showing that, no, I'm not into sports, but I'm into, let's say, computers. Right. Okay. Encourage that. They don't have to have sports. They don't have to have the great IQ. Yeah. Kids are going to do different things. And so we encourage them to do different things, not necessarily everything that we grew up with. Right. So when the children told me that I'm not interested in doing this particular sport anymore, I'm like, okay, well, what is it that you do want to do? Well, I want to make some money. I want to work. Okay. So I said, okay, fine. Let's start looking at the jobs. Okay. Because a lot of parents, as well as grandparents, will complain about money issues, and they'll talk about how they can't pay for this and can't pay for that. And then you wonder why the child rebels, because then on the other hand, you're telling them to pursue things that's not getting them far, that's not giving them any type of money, like right now type of money. So then when they have these needs, they try to figure out some ways to get those needs met, and they're not necessarily legal. Okay. Because somebody's like, well, I need you to do this, but then at the same time, though, you're not supplying certain needs. So, you know, children are going to pay attention to all sorts of things. We can talk about relationships in another audio. Okay. But we have looked at all sorts of things. I know I did growing up when it came to relationships, and people talking out of two sides of their mouth, saying that they love folks, but then really hating them, saying that they're going to be there for them, but then they turn out and they're not there. Saying that this is the way life should be, and then turning around and doing something totally different. All of these contradictions, all of these hypocrites, not just in the church, but let's talk about the hypocrites that are around. Right. And they keep the children in a rebellious state of mind. These pretenders who pretend as if they're good, as if they're righteous, as if they're close with the Lord, but you can see the fruit on their tree that they're not. Yeah. And so when we have children in front of us and they are asking us the hard questions that we don't really want to answer, we need to step it up and ask the Lord, should I answer this question? Lord, should I direct this child over here rather than over there? Because I'm seeing that these results are doing nothing more than keeping them in a rebellious state of mind. Am I really all that good as I claim, or am I nothing more than a rebellious adult who once was a rebellious teen? Because we have a lot of that. And so I look at Victor and I say, hallelujah and thank you, Jesus. Stay right with the Lord. Okay. We are going to be checking in with you on this walk because, hey, there's a lot of folks that's praying and they are curious at times about what's going on with my family, wrong and right. And so every now and again, I'm interviewing the kids because I want you guys to see that this is real. I want you to hear that this is real, that these kids are doing the types of things that are going to propel them in life, God willing, God able, God in their life. And so because of that, they are targeted at times by foolish adults. Sometimes they're targeted by their own peers. Sometimes they're targeted by teachers who have fallen by the wayside or are not believers. And so please continue to keep my children in prayer. Thank you, Victor, as always, for taking time out to talk with me.
Yeah. Thanks.
And blessings to you.
Yeah.
Well, that is it. Please do check the description box for anything that might be of interest. You've been listening to YouTube NM Enterprise 7. Subscribe today. Also, if you haven't given, we do welcome donations, and blessings to you.